Okay, what should we do? So we're not going to have it. We'll have to wait till Akiva goes back. I don't know. So clearly have a chance, see what happens. Something's happening. Okay, we'll go back to that. So Dr. Gemara. So the last thing we learned was the Hilchos of Mishipui Koiva Ulamatak Shever. Meaning, you're even allowed to shecht out of the Tabas HaGdoila onto that conical section that connects to the jaw, but you can only shecht in the conical section where it's at the full opening, not after it starts to taper down. V'hainu d'shayir b'chiti, that's also the same shear as cutting through the vocal cords, because the vocal cords are positioned in that section of the kona right before the kona starts to taper. Rab Nachman achsher mishiba koivu lamata. Rab Nachman was also machsher this place, the shech. Amar le Rab Chanan bar Rav Katina Rab Nachman. Come on, who are you aligning with? Like Rabbanon, who holds that it has to be in the Tabas HaGdoila fully. V'loik Rabbi Yosy, who holds a roiv has to be in the Tabas HaGdoila. V'loik Rabbi Yosy Bar Yehuda. Amar le, you're right. I know like Chiluk Yedana, but like Biluk Yedana, I don't know from these masses. I know Shmaitz Yedana. I know the state. The Amar here by Abba Amar Yechanan, V'amar Amar Abba Bar Zavda, Amar Chanina, V'amar Amar Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi, Amar Bishur ben Levi, Mishifu Koiva Ulamatak Shera. So Ana loy Chiluk Yedana v'loy Biluk Yedana. Rashi is actually two pshatim. Either it's just a saying, or it means Ana loy Chiluk Yedana. I don't know Chiluk, which would refer to the Rabbanon, who hold you have to be mechalik the tabas l'shnayim, meaning you have to be within the tabas hagdoila, or v'loy biluk yedana. Biluk is like to destroy the simonim, because he's starting in the simonim and then he's going out, right? So that's one pshat Rashi, but the other pshat Rashi likes better is Chiluk and Biluk are like Joe and Shmo. They're names used to say like Joe and Shmo. I don't know if I'm Chiluk, I don't know if I'm Biluk. I know what I learned Shmaitza, I know what I heard from Amoraim, and he brought a whole list of Amoraim who say it's Mishivui Koiva Ulamata would be a kosher shchita. Okay, weiter. Mugremes derabanan kshera l'Rabbi Yehuda, l'Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda. What is mugremes according to the Rabbanon? If you, even though you shechted roiv into the tabas hagdoila properly, and then after you veered up, that's possible according to the Rabbanon, but it will be kosher according to Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda. With Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda, and what Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda considers possible, meaning if you were roiv not in the tabas hagdoila, rather you were in the shipur koiva, there that's ksher l'Reb Chanina ben Antignus. That's kosher to Reb Chanina ben Antignus because he holds that even that is a kosher place to shecht. In fact, more pshita, what new information are you telling us that we didn't know? Now the tamer Reb Chanina ben Antignus ad Rabbanan kai. You would have thought that Reb Chanina ben Antignus is only being makel over the Rabbanon, that you don't have to shecht the whole shchita inside the tabas hagdoila. Kamash alon, that he's even arguing on Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda. Let's see what Rashi says. Mao the tamer Reb Chanina the machshir amugremis the Rabbanon kai aval heicha the kula l'mayla min tabas psula. Maybe he would hold that when the whole shchita is above the tabas, it's possible. Kamash malon, that it's kosher even if it's kula l'mala min hatabas. Kamash malon. Ve'em hachanami. Maybe that is pshat in Reb Chanina ben Antignus. Maybe he's not mekel to shecht completely out of the tabas hagdoila. Maybe you'd have to. Maybe he's just been modit Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda. So Gemara in Cain Heid Olam Mibayile. If we go back to Amud Beis, where we quoted Reb Chanina ben Antignus, what did the Brisa say? Hashoich b'shar tabois afal b'shein makivus as a kana hoyle makivus as reiva kana shchitas kshera. And then it says umegremes psula. Umegremes psula was the Rabbanon talking. afilu ruba b'toich hatabas u'mi'uta l'mayla mitabas hagdoila, that would be possible, which is the Rabbanan Shita. And directly commenting on that, hey, Reb Chanina ben al mugremes sheik shera. Why didn't, if Reb Chanina ben Tignis was only referring to the Hagrama of the Rabbanan, and he's speaking right after the Rabbanan, he should have said, hey, Reb Chanina ben Tignis Allah sheik shera, on what we just discussed a moment ago. By saying mugremes, meaning he's arguing even on a broader scenario, meaning even on Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda. Zok the Gemara, ve'ema hachanami, zok the Gemara, im kein heir Allah mi bailei. Ve'hilchasa, halacha l'maisa, ki Reb Chanina ben Antignus, te koi Reb Nachman kavasei. Because Reb Nachman paskins like him. So I'm just going to look at this Rashi, who he finalizes the Shita of Reb Chanina ben Tignis, which is how we paskin. Umidahader v'nakat al mugremes shmamina atarvayu mugremes de la ilminekoi. He's going both on the Hagrama of the Rabbanon, but even on the Hagrama of Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda, where Roiv is not going to be shechted in the Tabas. Even there, Reb Chanina ben Antignus would be matter. V'chi kamar lemiboy mugremes to Rabbanon to ruba b'tabas kshera. Ela'af mugremes Rabbi Yosy the kula l'maylam in the tabas is also kshera, and we paskin like Reb Chanina ben Antignus the koi Reb Nachman kavasei the achshir mishipu koiva ulamata kidei amoran. Rashi says on Amud Beis again we paskin like Reb Chanina ben Antignus the chol eidos hilchasei. Whenever there's lashon of hayid, it means that's how the Gemara paskins. So we have two indications here in the Gemara. We paskin clearly like Reb Chanina ben Antignus. Amar Huna, Amar Vasi, Machlokes b'shachat shnei shlish v'higrim shlish. So we're talking here about a machlokes between Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda and the Rabbanon. If Roiv was shechted in the Tabas Hagdoila, would it be kosher or not? According to Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda, it's kosher, and according to the Rabbanon, it's not. Which part are we talking about where you shechted out of the Tabas Hagdoila? Was it the first third or the last third? Or maybe it was the middle third? So Zog the Gemara, Machlokes b'shachat shnei shlish. First you did a shchita of two shlish, meaning you shechted roiv di simonim b'kashrus, v'higrim shlish, and then after you shechted roiv simon, then you went out of the Tabas Hagdoila. The Rabbanan Savri Kula Shchita Be'inan B'Tabas Gedola. Rabbi Yehuda Savar Ruboy Kekulei. But what would happen if Higrim Shlish? First you started the Shecht out of the Tabas, and then you moved back down into the Tabas. V'Shachat Shnei Shlishay. There Divrei Akol Psula. Why? The Chinaf Chayusa. Because at the point where you hit Roiv de Simin, which is when we say the life of the animal ends, at that point you didn't shecht roiv in the right place, because half of your roiv was shechted in the wrong place. So the chinavka chiyusa be'inan ruba b'shchita v'leka. Amalei Reb Chisda, Adarabba, I would disagree with you, and I would say exactly the opposite. Lemar ibcha, machlokes k'shehigrim shlish v'shachat shnei shlish. That's where the Rabbi Yosy Yehuda Savar would be good. Why? Midi dehavi achatzi kane pogam. We know the halacha is that nikava veshet is puzzle, but nikava kane is kosher. So how big of a hole does there have to be in the kane to make the animal treifa? The answer is roiv the kane has to have a hole in it, but a small hole in the kane will not cause any psul. So what if I'm shechting in a kane that has a hole in it a third of the way through, and I continue that hole with my knife, and I bring it to Raif? That's a kosher shchita. Why shouldn't it be kosher shchita? The first half was not done properly. So Zog to Gemara, the Rabbi Yosy be the sovereign, media to have a chatzi kana pogum. If it was chatzi kana pogum, and you shech it from there, by the time you hit roiv of the kana, only part of that roiv was done with the knife, but much of that roiv was already there from a hole. So why is that any different than higrim? All that matters is when you pass the finish line, it was passed b'kashrus. The Rabbanon Hasam makam shchita. The Rabban don't know. There it's not good. You know why? Because if you're in the makam shchita, but there's a hole that's not treifa, so from what's there of the kana, you're shechting properly. But hachalav makam shchita. But here, 1/3 is not even in the makam shchita at all. That wouldn't be okay. Aval shachat shnei shlish. But what if you shechted 2/3, which means now the animal's dead already? Vehigum shlish, and the last third is when you veered off. Divra kok sheira. Everybody holds it's kosher. After an animal's dead, if you chop the meat, what's the big deal? The Tanan we learned, Rubai shal echad kamayu. We know that you go basarayv. Amar le Rabbi Yosef, man name alone, tahu ruba dahasum lav Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda katani la. How do you know this halacha that you brought down, that Roiv Simon is a good shchita? Who said everybody agrees to that fact, that Roiv Simon is a shchita, and therefore you could apply this halacha to the Rabbanan as well, that if you shechted shnei shlish and then you higrim shlish, divra kol kshera, because of Roiv. You shechted already Roiv. Who said the Rabbanan b'chol even hold that Roiv Simon is enough? Maybe the Rabbanan hold you have to shech the whole Simon b'kashers. You have a brisa that says, you have a mission that says, Ruba Shalachat Kamayu. Who said that's the Rabbanan? Maybe that's also Rabbi Yosy Bar Yehuda. Dilma, Rabbi Yosy Bar Yehuda Katani La. Omar Le Abaye, I don't understand. Atu Kol Ruba de Omar, Rabbi Yosy Bar Yehuda Katani Lu. We know Rav. Rav is a universal halacha. So you're going to punct aside to say now that Rav B'chol Tarkula is only according to Rabbi Yosy Bar Yehuda. Avada the Rabbanan hold of Rav as well. Omar Le, he said, no, that's not what I mean. Of course, Ruba B'chol Tarkula is everybody. We're talking about specifically the fact that you have to shech the roiv of a siman for shchita. Amarle anah ruba the shchita kamina. The shma'ana lahu the pligi. We already know that when it comes to shchita, Rabbi Yosy Bar Yehuda is more liberal in his application of roiv. So maybe by shchita he holds that roiv is enough, but maybe the Rabbanan holds by shchita you need the whole siman. Lishnachrina. We have another way how this whole discussion went down. Amar Amar Avhuna Amar Asi Machloikish Shehigrim Shlish V'Shachat Shnei Shlish. To Rabbi Yosy Bar Yehuda Savar Midi Dehava Achatzi Kana Pogam. It's a good shchita, no different than if you started shechting a kana that had already been somewhat damaged. V'Rabbanan Hasam Mishum Shchita Hakam Makam Shchita. Yes, if the kana is pogam, but it's in the makam shchita, that's where we will say that just getting it over the finish line will be a good shchita. But hachalav makam shchita, to say that the cut that was above the right area, that should be part of a shchita, that would not work. But at first you shechted 2 shlish, and then only afterwards you went out of the zone. V'higrim shlish, difficult kshera. The Tanan, because we learned Ruba Shalachat Kamayu. Maybe that roiv is only going according to Rabbi Yosy Bar Yehuda. Dilma Rabbi Yosy Bar Yehuda Katani La. Amalei Rabbi Yosef, the same sugis before. Atu Kol Ruba de Alma Rabbi Yosy Bar Yehuda Katani La. Are you going to say that roiv b'chala tarkula is only going according to the shita Rabbi Yehuda? Amalei Ana Ruba de Shchita Kamina. Maybe the fact that Roiv Simon is Kekuloi, that's a unique halacha only related to Shchita, and there, maybe the Rabbanan argue on that. We know Rabbi Yosy Bar Yehuda beferish holds you do of us Roiv Shchita, the Shma'ana lahu the pligi. Okay, what about Higrim Shlish, the Shachat Shlish, the Higrim Shlish? So 2/3 of the Shchita, if you look at the Shchita as a whole, were possible, but when you cross the finish line, at the time that you hit Roiv, it was finished with a kosher shchita. Rav Huna Amarav Kshera, Rabbi Yehuda Amarav Treifa. So I just want to point out.
Second, but that's not really true. You mean when he ended the second third,
it was good.
Kosher.
That's right.
Even though it wasn't Roiv of the Mokum Kosher.
Correct. Even though if you look at the shchita as a whole, Roiv was not done with Mokum Shchita. Right. But the integral part, the most important part of the shchita, which is when you cross the finish line, that was done in the right zone.
No, when you cross the finish line, he's a higrim.
No, higrim shlish, v'shachat shlish. The second third is where you're crossing over into the right. So that was the critical point. So at the critical point, you were in the right zone.
At the critical point, you only had a third of the.
Well, yeah,
That's right. So that is the shaila. Because you say it's like shachat b'makam kana pogum, right? That by shachat b'makam kana pogum. Also, by the time you did the shchita, you still had roiv not with a proper shchita. Yet it's kosher. Or do you say? So do you say you look at that critical point, or do you say you look at the shchita as a whole? That's the discussion over here. So shachat shlish v'higum shlish. So higum shlish v'shachat shlish v'higum shlish. Rav Huna Marav Kshera, Rav Yudah Marav Treifa. So I want to draw your attention to two things. A is they're both arguing in what Rav said. So it's both a discussion of what they heard from Rav, right? That's point number one. And point number two is Rabbi Yehuda is Machmer and Rabbi Huna is Mekel, right? How about the next question? Rav Yehuda Merav Shrefer. Rav Merav Shrefer is Kinafka Chiyusa B'Shchita Kanafka. At the critical point is when it was bechashrus, and Yehuda Marav Treifa be'inon ruba b'shchita v'leka. You need roiv of the shchita to be kosher.
When you have
So the Gemara made that the chiluk that's at least b'makom shchita. Here it's not even b'makom shchita, so that makes it worse. Okay, so in the first machlokes that we just quoted, Rabbi Yehuda is machmer, Rav Huna is mekel, but they're both arguing about what they heard from Rav. Next, what about shachat shlish, v'higum shlish, v'shachat shlish? So it's exactly the opposite case. Roiv the shchita is b'kshashris, but at the point that you finished the roiv, it was b'paslos. Rabbi Yehuda Marav kshera. Rabbi Yehuda Marav says kshera. Why? The logic follows because he holds you look at the whole shchita. Right? If he said treifa before, it's because you look at the whole shchita. Here it works to your advantage. Right. And here it works to your advantage. Also, shaylu Rav Huna. They asked Rav Huna the same shaila. Amalu treifa, which would be consistent with his shita that you look at the point of when you cross the finish line.
Say that Rav said it.
I say, that's what I'm trying to point out. So Shama Rav Yehuda, when Rav Yehuda heard that Rav Huna is arguing on him on everything he says, ikbit. Amar tarifna umachshir. I say strafe, he says it's kosher. Umachshar tarif. And when I say it's kosher, he says strafe. You know, he was getting frustrated. Rav Huna said, Shaper kamikbet. The truth is, Rabbi Yehuda has a right to be frustrated with me. Why? Chada iu shamiya le'minei derav, v'ana loy shamili. In the second halacha, Rav Huna didn't say anything over the name of Rav. On his own, he said treifa. So he has a right to have ties on my second shot because I used the same logic, but I didn't actually hear it directly from Rav. And number one, v'oid ha'ikar ruba b'shchita. Lamaisa, he has a good argument that roiv of the animal, where the simon was cut properly. Amar Reb Chisa told Rav Huna, don't back down. Lois Haterbach. You have a good argument. Why should you back down? Dim Kain, Mafsedis Lo Lekamaisa. If you back down, being that these two machloikis natoli zebezah, you're going to have to back down on your previous halacha where it was higum shlish v'shachat shlish, higum shlish, where you heard from Rav that that's kosher, but if you're going to back down on this halacha, so it's linked in logic to the other halacha. Dimkeim I've said this kamaisa, the amrit mishmei de Rav Zakrashi. That you already did say the name of Rav that higum shlish v'shachat shlish higum shlish is kshera. Al nolav v'ru the shchita. From that psak you see that we don't look at the roiv of the whole shchita, ela the nepuk chiyusa b'shchita. That all we care about is at the point where the animal loses its life, it should be in the right zone. Shlish chayimsa. Hasa my time of kamachshir is. Why did you say it's kosher in that case? The chinafka chayusa be'echsher kanafka. At that point, when you crossed over into roiv territory, it was done properly. Hachanami. Here you would say no differently. Kinafka chayusa ba'grama kanafka. By the same reason, you should say that this case is possible. Ikla Rav Nachman Lusura. Rav Nachman came to Surah. Boimina, and they asked him the following question: Shachat shlish, v'higum shlish, v'shachat shlish mahu. I remember whenever they used to bring in a rav, they were thinking of getting a rav and good. Eventually, got a rav. So the hot topic of controversy at that time was: is the Erev good? Isn't the Erev good? So the first thing they asked every rav is the Erev good? Because that was the hot topic. So it seems like in those days the hot topic was shachat shlish, v'higum shlish, v'shachat shlish. So anytime a rav came, that's the question that they asked him to see what side he would be on. Amalahu lav hainu to Rabbi Elazar bar Minyumi. Wouldn't this be consistent with Rabbi Elazar, with what Rabbi Elazar ben Minyumi said? Dam Rabbi Elazar bar Minyumi. Shchita ha'asuya kemisrek. What if your shechita was not a straight line? You went up and down and up and down. Ksheira, it would be kosher. A comb. So you have a comb. So a comb has a whole bunch of teeth. So the tooth is up, and you went down. In between the tooth, up and down. So it's going to be kosher. So you see clearly going in and out of the makom shechita will be kosher. That's what Rabbi Elazar Bar Menyume must be referring to. Where shachat shlish v'egum shlish v'shachat shlish. Fekma, who said v'dilma b'makom shechita? Maybe Rabbi Elazar Menyume was saying if you go up and down, but you're within the zone. But it's not a nice straight cut; it's a wavy cut. Maybe that's what he meant. Who said he's b'chlal even getting involved in this shayla of agrama? Zok Gemara v'dilma b'makom shechita. Zok Gemara, no. B'makom shechita my lememra. Why do I need him to tell me that if you was shechted up and down b'makom shechita? What's the difference? If you're b'makom shechita, it doesn't matter if you go up or down. Zok Gemara, ma'od tema be'inan shechita mufuras. You might think you need a straight cut. Rashi's mugula v'nekeres. If it's straight, it's you could see it. It opens up. You see exactly what the cut is. If it goes up and down, you can't even see. It doesn't even open up completely. Maybe veleka that wouldn't be kosher. Kamash malon that you could do that. So therefore, Rabbi Elazar ben Menyume's comments were not relevant to our shayla.
I'm confused. Didn't we say that the real makom shechita is in between the rings?
That was one shita.
There was only one shechita.
There's one. We don't hold like that.
Otherwise, the whole kana is
From where it connects to the jaw, which is the shipu koiva, down to the lungs. I don't know. We didn't have a whole machlokes exactly where it is at the bottom, but at the bottom. So and that's several inches. Or if it's a giraffe, it's several feet. Kamashvalon. Yosef Rab Abba Achayrit Rav Kahana. Rav Abba was sitting in yeshiva in the row behind Rav Kahana. The Yosef Rav Kahana Kamed Rav Yehuda. And Rav Kahana was sitting in front of the Rebbe Rav Yehuda. The Yosef V'Komer, and Rav Kahana asked a shayla to the Rebbe. And the shayla he asked was, Shachat Shlish, the Higrim Shlish, the Shachat Shlish Mahu. So this is the same machlokes that we've been talking about with yeah. But the reason why I'm saying it's the same machlokes because I'm going to finish that comment by saying, or is it the same machlokes? That we're going to have to see. Amalei, it sounds like it's the same, but it might not be the same. Amalei shchitasik sheira, higrim shlish, the shachat shlish, the higrim shlish, mau, amalei shchitasik psula. Shachat b'makam nekev mau, amalei shchitasik sheira. So shachat b'makam nekev means the color was half cut out, right? Right. But what about shachat upaga by nekev? What if you're shechting along the corner where there's a hole, but you're not starting from the whole side, you're starting from the complete side. And halfway through, before you hit the roiv, you hit that gap. So now, what crossed the finish line? The hole that was not shechted. Mahu. Omer le'shchitasai
That's the
psula.
case of shachat upaga by nekev?
Yeah.
Where the hole is in the top part of the animal.
Correct. Oh, that's exactly how Rashi describes it. If the hole's at the bottom of the neck, then that's shachat mitoich nekev. But if the hole is on the part of the cut that's closest to the spine, which is towards the back, so then you start cutting on a pristine siman, and halfway through, you hit a hole. Yeah. It's like when we are drilling through cinder block, so we drill, and then the cinder block is hollow in the middle. And then all of a sudden it gives, because we're cutting through something that's not complete all the way through. Okay, so let's have a look at Rashi. The Yosef V'Komer of Kahana Kaboy Rav Yehuda. Rav Kahana was asking this question of Rabbi Yehuda. Shchitas Kshera Mishum Deruba B'Shchita Rabbi Yehuda Lav B'Meifik Chiyusa Talitayim Kedam Reliyah. Right, Rabbi Yehuda always held that you don't look at where it lost its life. You look at the shchita as a whole. If the shchita is done in the right zone, it's going to be kosher. Shachad B'Makam Nekev Shayu Chatza Kana Pogam B'Tzido Yachitzai. Shachad B'Pogam B'Nekav Shayu Chatza Kana Pogam B'Tzido Pnimi L'Tzad Mafrek is exactly the way Shlomi described it. Okay. He holds a psula. Amalei Rab Abba, Azor Rab Abba. Rab Abba went, Amra Kamei de Rab Elazar. He told Rab Elazar this halacha, and then Azor Rab Elazar, Amra Kamei de Rab Yochanan. So word of Rabbi Yehuda's psak made its way to Rabbi Yochanan's ears. And Amar Lei, he asked the question, Maishna, what's the difference between if you cut the makam nekev, or if you hit the nekev in the middle, why should there be a difference? Maishna, Amar Lei, I'll tell you the difference. Shachat b'makam nekev, Nasa kemi sheshachat oived kechavim v'gomer Yisrael. What if a goy cuts the neck of a animal, but he doesn't cross the finish line, and then right before the finish line, a yid completes the shechita? That will be perfectly kosher. Shachat b'makim nekev nasa kemi sheshachat oived kechavim zok Rashi. It's like the goy cut chatzi kana, half of the kana. The gomer Yisrael, and the Yisrael finished the shechita. The kanafke chiyusa b'yada the Yisrael. Where did the animal lose its life? While the yid is shechting. Ubepalga kamaisa loy mitrava. Even though the first half of severing the neck was not a proper shechita because it was done by a goy, but it's not treif either, so it's still a kosher animal. The psuka sagager shiure beruba, because we know that the kana has to be severed a roiv in order for it to be treifa. So therefore, the yid who just crossed the finish line did the complete shechita. But on the other hand, shachat who pagaboy nekev nasa kamisha shachat Yisrael the gomer avid gechavim. So therefore, it's not going to be kosher. Zok Rashi shachat who pagaboy nekev nasa kamisha shachat Yisrael the gomer avid gechavim. That's possible. Daloi avid Yisrael shir shechita bereisha. The Yisrael didn't do a shir shechita first. Zok the Gemara Karialei. In other words, Rabbi Yochanan asked Rabbi Lazar Ma'ishna, and Rabbi Lazar told him this answer. Rabbi Yochanan didn't like this explanation, and he said, "Karila Ovid Gechavim Ovid Gechavim." In other words, Goy Shmoi. Haknish can cop with the Yalk. You're comparing it to Goy. So it was just a comment. Loisha Karila Ovid Gechavim. He wasn't referring Chas Hashem that Rabbi Lazar is a Goy. What he meant, Elig Ovid Gechavim Ovid Gechavim means Goy Shmoi is Hakstad Shining. They're not. It's not a good comparison, or it's not a good contrast. Amarava Shaper Kari Alei Ovid Gechavim Ovid Gechavim. Rabbi Yochanan had a good time because the distinction is not a good distinction. Bishlam Mahasam, where the goy did it. Midahavalei liYisrael lemishchat ruba v'loy shachat, where the yid was supposed to shecht the roiv, and he did it. The goy who finished the shechita and crossed the finish line, yes, that we understand, that shechita will be possible. Elahacha, when you're talking about the fact that there was a nekev on the upper side of the kana that you bumped into as you were cutting, and you ended up not cutting the roiv, michti, mishke shachet, he's shechting it. Mali b'makam nekev, mali paga by nekev. What's the difference? You look at this kana that's missing half of it, like it's a complete kana. Whatever was remaining of that kana, which is the part you have to shecht, he shechted. So then why would you say that it's possible? Let's see Rashi inside. V'ishlam shachat Yisrael v'gomer ovid gechavim psula midahavelei liyisrael l'mishchat ruba shahaya hakana shalem lefanav. The kana was complete when he started the shechita, and the guy did right of it. When the guy finished it up, v'lo shachat elachetcha, he only shechted half. Therefore, lav midi of it. The chiyusa b'chatzi kana loy nafka. The act of shechita on the first half of the kana before you cross the roiv, that's not a full shechita, and therefore he didn't do a proper shechita. V'avelik a kana shalem. When he finished cutting half the kana, it's as if it's a complete animal because it's not a treifa yet. The chiyusa oivit kechavim basrei dami command David kula. It's as if the goy did a full shechita. The chiyusa b'yadei nafka, because the line was crossed, the animal's life left at the point that the goy shechted it. Evel hacha the shachat upaga b'nekev michti mishke shachet kol nimtzaba. Whatever was remaining in this kosher animal is what he shechted. Utreifis b'chatzi kana lehava. It's not treifa just because there was a big hole in the kana. So this is a perfectly kosher animal. Therefore, when he begins this shechita, it's as if it's a complete kana, because halachically it is complete. And right now he shechted it. Therefore, it shouldn't make a difference where the nekev was. At the end of the day, all of the shechita that was needed to be done was done by Eid.
This is all academic. There's no way they could even figure this out.
What do you mean?
Know which way was. If there was a hole, how would they even know? Unless it's like
You could be moedik it afterwards
and what?
and see.
Yeah, but the knife, your knife would have gone through already.
Yeah, but it could have been a big hole, like a round hole. It's not necessarily a slice that would resemble a knife cut. It could have been a hole, deterioration, whatever. What if you don't shech the animal? The normal way to shech is from the bottom of the neck up. What if you shech it from the side? It had to be done in such a way where you're not going to be pogim the sakin onto mafrekas before you cut the simonim. But you cut it from the side. I'm not sure how you would do it, but it was done obviously in such a way where you're getting the simonim first. But if you do malika from the side of the neck of the bird, there it's milikase psula, because the Torah specifically tells you that the malika has to be mimul arpoi. It doesn't say anywhere that the shechita has to be mimul arpoi. So therefore, as long as you can shech properly without damaging your knife before you damage the simonim, you'll be okay. But malika is specific. The Torah says mimul arpoi. Hashoichet min ha'oreif shechita se psula. Hamoilek min ha'oreif min ha'kosek shera. Not only is it kosher, that is the textbook way to do it. Oreif is the back of the neck. And we're going to see soon that oreif isn't the back of the neck. Oreif is the back of your head. At the back of your head, you can't shech. There's no spine there. The back of the neck is further down. The pasuk is mimul arpoi. It should be adjacent to the back of the head. So that's where we know that the shechita, the malika, has to happen on the neck. Hashoichet bin a tzavar shechita shera, because that's the way you're supposed to shecht. Hamoilek with a tzavar milikaz psula on the wrong side. Shekol ha'orev kosher l'malika, v'chol ha'tzavar kosher l'shchita. Nimtza, they're inverse of each other. Kosher b'shchita is possible malika. Kosher b'malika is possible b'shchita. The Gemara is going to want to know, what is this adding to what we know already? We already know from the back and the front. There must be some other areas that you could shecht that will be kosher for malika and possible b'shchita and vice versa. My orev, what exactly is the orev? Ilay ma orev mamish, if it literally means the back of the head, my ear yeshaychet, I feel moilek nami would be possible if the kohen puts his nail through the back of the head of the bird. It's mimul orpoi amar rachmana. It has to be opposite the back of his head, but further down on the neck. V'loy arpoi. Ela my oiref. So when it says oiref in the Mishnah, it must mean mimul oiref. Kid the Ketani Seifa, like the Seifa says, kol ha'oiref kasha l'malika. What do you see from there? Zokt Rashi, the oiref of a bird is a tiny little area. It's a small little head. So what do you mean kol oiref? It's like the whole 12 feet of oiref. There's maybe a millimeter of oiref. So it must be referring to the neck. So you have a couple of inches to talk about. That's where the lashon kol would be appropriate. It's not the oiref itself. It's the back of the head that's adjacent to the oiref. This was Balak complaining to Bilam that Klal Yisrael was opposite him. It wasn't on him. It was opposite him. So mul means adjacent to. We have another pasuk that says, this is the Navi complaining that Klal Yisrael goes to avoid the Zara and rather to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Kipanu elay arif. They showed me the back of their head, but lay panim, not the front. First of all, the other pasuk doesn't say anything about mul. We're looking for a makor for mul. It doesn't say anything about mul. A and B is we already have a pasuk mimuli. Why do you need second pasuk? Zok Gemara, we're just trying to define what the arif is. You need to know what the arif is to know what adjacent to the arif is. So you see, arif is the back side of the face. Very simple. Amri b'nei Rab Chia. The children of Rab Chia said the following: Mitzvahs malika machzer simonim lachayre ha'arif umaylek. You know what you do? What you could do, they're not saying you have to, what you could do is you can pull the simonim from the front of the neck, stretch them around to the back of the neck, so now when the kohen's nail is puncturing, it will puncture the simonim before it breaks the mafrekas. Right? Normally in Malika, the knife of the nail of the kohen would break the mafrekas first, and then go through the simonim. Here it's not. Ikadamri, af machzer. So the first shot was, that's the way it has to be done. The second shot in what they said was that would also be kosher, even though it's not the conventional way. Vikudamri machzir dafka. There are those who say no, it's only going to be a kosher malika if you bring the simonim to the back. Umistaver command damar af machzir. it's more mishafer to say that the real way to do malika is through the mafrekas first, and then through the simonim. But if you did it non-conventional, and you pulled the simonim around to sever them first, that would also be kosher. Why is that the svara? Mimai, midikatoni hashoichet bin ha'arev shechitase psula, and a moilik bin ha'arev shechitase psula, it must be that you are cutting the oirah before the simonim. V'sol kadaitach machzir davka, my moilik afilu shoichet nami. If it means davka where you pull the simonim around, that would be a kosher shechita as well. If you pull the simonim around, because I guess you could stretch them. Elav shmamina af machzir. And the Mishnah that says that the shechita is not kosher if it's from the Erev is speaking where you didn't pull the simonim around to sever them first. Okay, we'll stop here.